Ready? Okay. I will call to order the Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for January 28th, 2014. Roll call, please.
Chair Simpson.
Here.
Vice Chair Kopfer.
Here.
Commissioner Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Carey.
Here.
Commissioner Walker. Here. Let the record show Beth Cook and John Clifford are absent.
Thank you. Agenda review. For the agenda tonight, we have a consent agenda and 2 hearings under the old business. Are there any corrections, additions, changes?
Correction to the consent agenda. Is that what
Okay.
you're
No, agenda, but I will call the consent agenda. All right. On the consent agenda, yes, you have a correction?
Yes. Where was it? On page 11, it indicates we have a quorum for that meeting, and we, in fact, did not have a quorum for that meeting.
I've actually turned in some Scrivener adjustments for that paragraph on page 11, which corrects some ins and outs. Do you want me to read what I wrote?
We just wrote it in.
Or just
It's just
note,
completely the opposite. I believe it's completely
we
the
had a
opposite.
quorum to take a vote.
Okay. So then that cleared that up? Okay.
Do you, how do you,
Please read it. Go ahead.
I can read it,
okay.
and then I can also make one correction. On the title page, it says work session, and it's an actual meeting. So
Okay.
the corrected minutes, starting on the second sentence, she stated that had James Kopfer been in the room and left, and Russell Griffin had come into the room, we would have seen them. Because that did not occur, we don't know when the exchange took place, period. We do have a quorum because Russell is still on the line, so we will be able to take action tonight. She accepted a motion to continue this hearing to a date certain. At that time, the applicant will be allowed a full 30 minutes and may start from the beginning of their testimony. Proponents and opponents will be allowed to testify.
Okay.
All right.
That corrects that.
Everyone in favor of the corrections?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Then do I have a motion to approve the corrected consent agenda?
I move we accept the corrected consent agenda with the corrections as stated.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. All right. Liaison announcements. Hello, Counselor. You are.
I am Council Member Robin Colson. For those of you who don't know me, I have been assigned to be the backup or alternate council liaison, and the mayor happens to be out of town, so here I am. So we really haven't done a lot yet this year as far as city council. We had a work session, sort of strategic planning for things that we were looking at this year last week. Very interesting. I'm sure you can find the minutes online. If anybody has any questions, we are talking about some of the things that will go into the medical marijuana dispensary issue, which is a pretty big deal. Some other priorities that council had set last year as well. Moving ahead on getting through finish.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for coming this evening. All right. Staff announcements.
Good evening, all. Just a few here. As you all know, we're underway with our transportation system plan update. Our next Citizen Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee meetings are scheduled for February 12th. We'll have an open house the following night, which is February 13th. Everyone is invited to both of those activities. Tentatively, we are trying to schedule a joint Planning Commission and City Council meeting for February 18th to give you both download on the TSP update process and the information that's been found to date. And then we have on February 11th scheduled a hearing with the Planning Commission to discuss front yard setbacks. It was an application brought by a private party, so it is still legislative, and it'll be a recommendation from you to the council. And then that leaves then February 25th. If you meet on the 18th, if you're available to meet on the 18th, then we can just take a poll tonight. Is everybody available for the 18th to meet with City Council?
And that would be like a 6 o'clock work session before their meeting, or
Bob?
From what I've been told is that the council doesn't necessarily want to have a work session. They'd like a formal presentation, and then we would have the planning commission at the council meeting as part of the audience to at least see the presentation and possibly ask questions with the council at that point in time.
okay, I'm available on the 18th. Is everybody
Will you
else?
just pull everybody and I see Michael says he's
Yeah,
not.
I'm not going to be available that day.
Okay.
Are you-
He's-
I'll be here.
Yeah, I think I should be able to.
Okay.
So it's 7 o'clock?
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll at least have 3-4 people there.
So then we would not have a meeting on the 25th?
So that's the question. Then, do you want to have a meeting on the 25th, at which point we can just do a work session, training session on the transportation system plan? And there's been discussion in the past about the transportation studies to kind of give you guys some more insight on how to use and interpret those as you're making decisions. We can also delay that. We haven't discussed that with the person that would be coming in to give it. So if you guys want, since you would be having a second meeting on the 18th, we can just take the 25th off.
When's it coming to hearing to the planning commission?
It won't be until June is when the public hearings are scheduled,
I think we could probably do a work session
later.
later in conjunction with a regular meeting and
Okay.
forego
Well, then
the
we will-
25th. If,
Tentatively, to go ahead and state tonight that there will not be a planning commission meeting on the 25th
okay,
in lieu of the joint session on the 18th.
that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our announcements, unless you'll have questions.
Just clarification, the February 14th is an open house meant for the citizens to come and interact with the consultants and the advisory committees regarding the transportation plan and the proposed projects, correct? Oh, sorry, Bob, you're in charge of that.
It's not the 14th, is
It's
it?
on the 13th.
13th.
It's the 13th.
13th.
And it will be an open house where we will, the consultant and city staff will present all the findings that we have up to date and the plans that we have currently established, and basically try and get some feedback from everybody on those plans.
And at that time, do you believe you'll have some of the projects identified so people will be able to
We
see
will.
those?
We
Okay.
will.
Okay, wonderful. All right, we now have community comments, and for the community comments, we actually ask you either for community comments or for the public hearings to fill out one of these blue cards and turn it into the recording secretary. At this time, if anybody has any community comments, that would be items not already on the agenda. Ask you to turn in a blue card and come forward. And okay, so we have one for citizen comments. Anne Reed. And this is for items not already on the agenda, correct?
It's sort of, but not. It's more about our restaurant and it's about the projects as a whole, not just.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Well, good evening. Can you hear me on this? Oh, I think it's on.
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think you just have to pull it kind of close.
Well, as you know, we're here from Rose's Restaurant Bakery. First, I wanted to thank you for your time again. It's been a while since we spoke.
It's on.
Can you hear?
It's kind of hard.
No. You
The
can't.
ta-
Yeah, go ahead and
yeah, the
Go
tape
ahead.
is
Okay.
recording.
Yeah.
it,
One
so
or
we're
the
good.
other.
Thank you. Well, again, we're just looking for answers and directions, updates on how the road changes. It's been a while since we spoke. You know, we've been regularly attending the meetings, but it's been a while since we spoke. We're located in the Sherwood Cinema Center. The 12th and Sherwood Road project and Baylor Way extension both have a huge impact on us. Since ODOT verbally approved the option for right-in off 99, combining this with the Baylor extension, we feel would be a great alternative for our signal being removed. So we're just looking for updates on kind of where we fall and how we can help. And also, when making decisions, if you could keep us and other local businesses like us and our employees, along with the community, in the heart of your decisions. We value the support we have received from you, the City of Sherwood, ODOT, and Washington County. We also value our needs as a business in this great community and that of the community as a whole. We hope to be included in future decisions when determining the road access to our restaurant and other items that may affect our business. We are a restaurant that has been serving Sherwood for over 10 years. Access and convenience is a huge part of our business. We have great food, wonderful customers, and strive for excellent service every day. The employees and owners of local businesses support us during our lunch service. Time is a huge importance to them, and our lunch service is a large part of our business. Lack of sales means our employees lose hours. We have a wonderful staff that loves serving this community. We hold our customers in high regard and appreciate every one of them as well. So timing is a huge issue, and access, obviously, and timing fall together. We're also asking today how we can help and how you can help us. My hope is that all different parties involved in the decisions for the road improvements and the access to our center can come together soon for the benefit of the community as a whole. We are excited to see the finished product of all the designs and plans. We are ready to move forward into receiving the benefits that we, along with the rest of the community, will gain from the improvements. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any?
Nope, we covered everything.
Okay. It's been a while since we spoke, and we just really, looking for updates and how we can help, and access is a key importance for our business to thrive. So we're just wanting to keep it on as a hot topic, and think of us.
We're still here.
We're still here. We're still part of the
Great,
community.
wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I have no other blue cards for citizens' comments tonight, so we will move forward to old business. All right. The first public hearing will be PA 1303 Transportation System Plan Amendment for Adams Avenue North, and I will read the public hearing script. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on PA 1303 TSP Amendment for Adams Avenue North. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning the Transportation System Plan Amendment for Adams Avenue North. This is, the staff will present a report followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission. We will then open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as followed. The applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. Then the rebuttal from the applicant will be the remainder of their 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. Final comments by staff up to 15 minutes. Questions of staff, if any, by the commission. Discussion and deliberation by the commission. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to the recording secretary. The Planning Commission chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as the hearing will be recorded, and please speak clearly into the microphone. In this application, the Planning Commission's decision is a recommendation for action by the City Council. And because it's a legislative matter, we do not have any ex parte contact per se, but we do need to disclose conflict or bias.
I have a potential conflict, and since I recused myself last time, I'm going to continue to recuse myself for this particular project.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other conflict or bias? I do want to disclose that I was contacted, probably for the other hearing, never mind, for the next hearing. So planning will now present the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you. The application before you tonight is an application from Washington County to the city to amend its transportation system plan to include an extension of the Southwest Adams Avenue north of Highway 99. Southwest Adams Avenue, for all intents and purposes, and because of a resolution earlier on by the City Council, is in fact Langer Farms Parkway North. So that's what we're going to be calling this area. It's Langer Farms Parkway. And essentially, the intent would be to serve, I'm going to point with a pointer up here, so you'll have to look back there. These commercial properties right here, this is property that's within our urban growth boundary but not annexed yet. It would be zoned commercial as well, and these light industrial properties as well over here. There are limitations to this site. If I can go back to the aerial, right back here, there's about a 70-foot deep corridor or draw through here. So it's highly unlikely and very financially infeasible that you would get enough development on this much property here to justify putting a bridge across that for serving the other side. It wouldn't connect any more than having the people come out here to the signalized intersection and then coming down and hanging right onto Roy Rogers Road to make that same entrance. And it would require that they have to drive through an established residential area, that Hunter's Ridge and the neighborhood associated with it. So they're proposing that this road be put onto the TSP as a collector street in support of those properties. And the county has indicated that it would be for the purposes of providing access to those properties and addressing capacity and safety issues in the area, generally focusing on getting traffic to signalized intersections along those corridors. One thing that I didn't mention in the last presentation that I feel like compelled to mention to you now, both Highway 99 and Roy Rogers Road to Walton Sherwood Road are designated freight routes within Washington County by both the state and the county. So, we like to minimize the number of accesses onto both of those streets. Currently, that right-of-way is not shown on the functional classification plan in the TSP. As proposed, it would be in addition to the TSP. I guess the forecasted traffic generation of that area in there, that property, if it was built out at the current zoning, would be about 5,000 average daily trips added to that area. And access, again, to the ravine and adjacent Hunter's Ridge wildlife is probably not feasible, or it's not proposed as part of the extension. So what we'd probably see there is some type of long cul-de-sac that serves that area, both commercial and industrial. That's how they would get access. And as last time, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council to go ahead and place this proposed collector onto the city's TSP functional classification map, and is recommending that you recommend to the City Council that they approve this application as proposed. And with that, I'll close my presentation and ask if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions for staff?
So that road comes in and it doesn't go through anywhere. It's just cul-de-sacs in and come.
That's the most
Just
likely
strictly for
scenario.
access.
It would have to be ultimately, so it shows an alignment here, and basically it's a line on the TSP map saying that there has to be some sort of connectivity there. This is a designated collector. The actual location of it and the configuration of it
Right.
would actually be determined at the time that those properties entertain a development proposal. But again, you're not going to get any highway access back out onto here.
Right.
So the likely scenario is that you would have a cul-de-sac coming over here. And there's a little triangle of land here, too, that needs to be served by this, too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Applicant, we have a group of people: Stephanie Slyman, Dan, Ben, and Peter. Not gonna-
Stephanie, do you want the Adobe up now?
That'd be great. Thanks, Brad. Thank you, Chair Simpson, Commissioners, and Brad for your staff report. I'm Stephanie Slyman with Harper Hoff Peterson Regelis. I am the applicant's representative. With me is Dan Erpenbach of Washington County. We also have available for testimony tonight Peter Coffey of DKS Associates, who's the traffic engineer, and Ben Austin, also with HHPR, who is the project engineer. So thank you again for your time tonight. Great, thank you. I'll keep our testimony brief because I know there's people here tonight who would like to testify. We'd like to be able to answer their questions as much as we can. First of all, as Brad mentioned, this is an amendment to your TSP map, which would add a new collector street to the map. Again, its design would not be determined at this time. It is simply a high-level planning level approval to show how connectivity in the city would be served by this. Your role as a planning commission is to provide a recommendation to city council who will make the ultimate decision. And so tonight we're here to provide testimony. Peter Coffey will also speak a little bit about the highlights of the traffic study to give you some more background. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce Dan Erpenbach to you, who will describe to you the reason for the county's interest in amending your TSP map and how this is one of the county's 4 approaches to managing safety and access on Tualatin Sherwood Road.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. This area that we're looking at has been partially developed. Up on the north end, there's a little bit of development, but for the most part, most of this area is undeveloped. There are 50,000 cars a day that go through the Tualatin Sherwood Roy Rogers 99W intersection. That makes that property very valuable as far as being one of the most seen properties in the county. You have 99,999 eyes looking at that property every day. The question is, why is the county important? Why is it important for the county to ask for this TSP amendment? Well, because of that 50,000 cars, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. It's that amount of traffic is jamming up this intersection here. And with the potential development of that property, it's going to create even more cars. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve here instead of chasing development after it's occurred and trying to figure out how to handle the traffic, is get ahead of the curve here and put a amendment on the plan showing that we want to have something done in here. Access is very important. Right now there is a driveway off of Roy Rogers Road that accesses this property. That access isn't capable of handling a commercial development. Something else needs to be done. Now, a question that has come up is, will that access on the Roy Rogers remain or go away? And I can't answer that because it's a function of what kind of development goes in there. There may be some access that stays on the Roy Rogers, but we're looking at a safety aspect here, and that driveway as it is right now is just too close to the intersection. It's a safety concern for the county. Now, 99W is under ODOT jurisdiction with Tualatin Sherwood and Roy Rogers under county jurisdiction. The collector that comes off of 99W is designated that way so that, well, one of the things is that it comes out as a signal. There's a signal there that people can access, which kind of addresses the safety aspect of it off of a major highway. The approach that the county is looking at for this area here, like Stephanie said, is a 4-prong approach to dealing with traffic in this area. The first one is widening Roy Rogers and Tualatin Sherwood Road. The second is implementing a ITS system or intelligent traffic system, and part of that's already been implemented on Tualatin Sherwood Road on the most easterly half of Tualatin Sherwood Road, and there's an ITS system in design right now that is going from Baylor Street to where it connects up further to the east with the existing system. A third approach is managing access along Tualatin Sherwood Road, Roy Rogers Road, and and also Highway 99. And that's kind of what we're doing here with this TSP amendment, is looking at managing the accesses. And the fourth item that the county looks at is creating off-corridor circulation. And here again, this is one of the items that we're addressing with this TSP amendment, is creating the off-corridor circulation. We want to get people to the businesses, but we want to get them there in a safe manner. And we want to be able to control how that manner is. And the two things are managing the access, limiting the number of driveways that come out onto major arterials, and also creating off-corridor circulation, which this road, when this area develops, will help do.
Thank you. Do you have any questions regarding the traffic study? We can ask Peter Coffey to come up, or just reserve that time for any questions that may arise.
I have no questions.
All right. Well, before we see the rest of our time, I would like to acknowledge one thing that I failed to mention at the start, in that we did have a neighborhood meeting before this proposal was put together, met with staff twice to make sure we were meeting the approval criteria. And part of the neighborhood meeting, we heard from a lot of the neighbors just to the west of this area, when the county originally was thinking of having the road continue all the way through. In addition to the physical constraints that Brad described, we also heard from the neighbors of how the hardships this would cause in the neighborhood. And the county did amend its proposal so that it stops where you see it today, just to serve those commercial and industrial properties. So just so that's clear, the county has listened to what your citizens have said in that regard.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you have 23 minutes and 24 seconds left. All right. So now is the time for proponents. And I have John Anderson. Who's an other, which I... It was the first card turned in, so.
All right. So my name's John Anderson. My address is 18007 Southwest Belton Road, Sherwood. First, I'd like to thank the commission for listening to my testimony. And I'm representing my wife, Barbara, and my sister, Catherine Shack. I grew up on that piece of property. I'm a lifetime resident of Sherwood. I've lived in Sherwood all except 3 years of our life, so I wanted to give you some context. When the intersection went in of Roy Rogers intersecting 99W, that was in 1991. We have had the property up for sale almost all of that 20 years, and it comes down to a issue of access. So it did have 5 accesses to the highway at the time that ODOT put that in. Those were taken away and the one given. And so we do not have access to the property, and that's what hasn't sold it. So I've worked with Dan before, and want to say that I very much appreciate getting access to this property, because it's just sitting there and will continue to sit there without access. But I didn't know whether to put a proponent or not, because here's what I'd like to do is show in this long curved, I was told that I could give my personal preferences, so that's what I'm doing here, is just instead of a long curved path, you could provide access parallel right behind Sherwood Business Park and parallel to 99W, and do a more efficient use of, and then if there's driveways in there, you could put driveways in there, but that would be, in my opinion, a much more cost-effective way of getting access to that whole property in there. And the reason why I say that, obviously, is because the road costs $1,000 a foot, and I'm not in favor of a high development cost for the property. We've waited 20 years. We'd like to get some fruit for our laborers sitting there not being able to develop. Other than that, I'm very much in favor of access. I'm very much in favor of getting this done and approved, because, again, we've brought this to the city, we brought this to the county, we brought this to ODOT. I was told by ODOT in a previous meeting with the city of Sherwood and Washington County that it was still an option to, on the south side of Sherwood Business Park, there we go. There's a driveway there that they would possibly open up depending on the development as well. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. And that's all I had, but I am very much in favor of getting access to that property through the light.
All right. Is there any questions for
Just-
Mr. Anderson?
No, just
Okay, we
for
can ask-
Brad in regards to that.
Okay.
Would that be something that would be addressed at the time an application for actually building the road would come into play?
So I guess if I'm understanding your question, you're saying if the road came here
Yeah.
as opposed to being curved, it could potentially come in at that time. I think that Mr. Anderson's asking for a little more certainty that it be
Sure.
shown back here. Yeah, ultimately, it's going to be dependent on how this property develops out. They're going to be required to provide the right-of-way at a minimum, and depending on the intensity of the development, they could end up having to construct the road. They'll definitely have to construct it to serve their property, and typically we like to bring it to the property edge. But so it'll really depend on how this develops out, but by putting the map in this location or in this indication, you might be encouraging somebody to look at when they design it, to design it in that manner. And then I just wanted to speak real quick to Mr. Anderson's discussion about having access out here. And I don't think that the county was opposed to that, and I'm certain ODOT would not be opposed to that because those are current locations of an access, but it would just have to be a private conversation and agreement between Mr. Anderson and this property owner.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
May I? Just, the only other consideration I forgot was the fire marshal. So typically there requires 2 accesses from the fire marshal to this, and I would want that taken into consideration before the existing access is vacated. So that would be a consideration that I think needs to be taken.
I think
So in that regard, he's asking that this access remain for potential fire access and not be taken. And it's not shown on the TSP now, and so really there's not any requirement to take any action, but definitely a consideration when any development comes in on those properties.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right. I have one other blue card for Adams Avenue, Renee Dorica.
Hi, I'm Renee Dorica, and address 20378 Southwest Lavender Place, Sherwood, Oregon. So originally when Washington County came and presented, it was, I believe, in July, the first road that they showed came out onto Borchers went crossed Hunter's Ridge and then came out in Borchers, and that connected those 2 lights, I think is what the thing was. And since then, obviously, they've amended that, but we just want to make sure that there wouldn't be a future interest in connecting the road that's being considered to be put in to then connect to the neighborhood. And some of the things that I've been listening to, I'm just, because of the phrasing, I'm just curious. I thought they said something about a light-to-light access, and so maybe I misunderstood that. But if that were the case, the only light that's there is the one that is currently across from Home Depot, and the only other light would be then at Borchers, which is why I think the light-to-light, that flow was considered. I was also interested. Originally, they had talked about that they were kind of conducting this for traffic flow. They were looking at the traffic flow from 99 to Roy Rogers, and at peak times, trying to take into consideration the amount of flow that they would be able to take away from the right-hand turn from 99 onto Roy Rogers. And so I don't know how that's going to be addressed, since that was one of the considerations originally, and now doing this little road that dead ends doesn't even apply to what was discussed originally. I just, like I said, I don't want anything where it eventually gets connected just because it's easy. Now you've got a road, stopping here, we can just connect it a little bit further. And Brad was saying that the cost wouldn't be there to fund a bridge, but I I can't verify. I guess part of it is who funds the roads there. The county, I believe, said they didn't fund the road. They were just saying that could be an option. I don't know if it's a city road or if it's those that develop the property has to put in the roads, but with enough money, I could imagine that they, a development could then take that money and go ahead and apply that to build a bridge across. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, but as neighbors, we have been discussing a much better use of some of that property. The wildlife refuge, we can see, and we don't have any major parks on our side. If anything, you have to cross Roy Rogers to try and get to a small little city park by the cemetery. That's a possibility if there's really a need for development. I don't know what the cost, who benefits that way, but we really oppose having, I know Hunter's Ridge, everybody that was there at the meeting in July was very, very opposed to any access to from 99 to Borchers. It would be really dangerous for the kids. We right now have so much traffic coming in on Borchers into our neighborhood just to get, because nobody can get out onto Roy Rogers from the north side of Roy Rogers going. So the north side of Roy Rogers in that neighborhood, we can't get out and turn left onto Roy Rogers except at the light. So they all travel past our house, and it is a nightmare. So I appreciate your time listening to our concerns. And
Thank you.
Is Borchers the one that comes in?
Yeah, we'll have the applicant reply to the light because I'm not sure where that came from. So we'll have them, when they come up in rebuttal, clarify that. Thank you. And
So isn't Borchers the one that comes into where Hunter's Ridge condos
yeah,
are?
over here on the other side of the
Okay,
ravine.
that's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
All right, I have one more blue card for Adams Avenue for Amber Dahl.
Hi, I live in that same subdivision. Do I need to say my name, address, all that stuff?
Yes, please.
Amber Dahl. I live at 20487 Southwest Lavender Place. My concerns are just the vagueness of the terminology. So it's in the presentation, it was said, right now it doesn't continue. On the map it's drawn that right now, and I'm concerned about right now. I want it to not ever go through our neighborhood. So it would be awesome if there was like a little dot at the end that said never is going to go past this. So just my concern is, we're here to just say, please don't divert all those cars into our neighborhood. And, if the concerns are the physical constraint and the expense, those are hurdles that can be crossed. And I would, much rather have the plan be firm that, that the cars are not going to come that way. The other concern is, and I guess I don't understand this, but it was said that it was an off-corridor circulation. I'm assuming the corridor is the main road, and circulation depicts like moving, but this is just a one dead-end street. So I don't understand where it's going to circulate, where the traffic's going to circulate if it's not going anywhere. And if it is going to go somewhere, I don't want it to come to Borchers. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I think we have one more. Mr. Claus, your blue card's making its way around.
Robert James Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. Just for the record, I want to point out something to you. And there's no other reason than this. This whole area is non-conforming illegal. Home Depot was low-density industrial until the Langers and Brennick got a hold of it. And for some unknown reason, good heavens, we'll never know, it was zoned as a lumber yard and then turned into retail commercial. Everything across the highway is illegal. Now, I don't think that matters in Sherwood. In fact, I think it's good because all the decisions this body makes are made outside of this room. You're sort of a nice facade, but you're not decision makers. You don't even ask the right questions. But that's not the point I want to make tonight. You do what you want to do in this town. Hi, Chrissy. How are you tonight?
How are you?
Really good. I'm getting much better.
Looking forward to hearing. Keep going.
Well, that's fine. I know you would. I know you can use all the help you can get. But what you've done is you've taken an absolutely illegal area, and we're now hearing from the Washington County planners that they can't call Walmart. They're not capable of this. I understand all of them have their hands broken and their fingers broken, and they can't dial a telephone, and find out that Walmart has the lowest purchase of the mass merchandisers, the lowest income and the oldest group of customers. And there's actually, believe it or not, set circulations that you will get here. So now we have two light industrial areas. One of them, the IRS says is not legal, but what do we know about the IRS? I mean, if you can get it by the IRS, it's legal. If you can get it by our planners, that's apparently okay. Even have to fire the city manager afterwards. But what you're doing tonight is putting a road as a collector status into an area that was created illegally over a situation we fired the city manager. At least Walt Hitchcock said it was the primary reason. So I really think you ought to do this because this is exactly how we plan in Sherwood. On a case-by-case basis, having nothing to do with what the law says. And if we want a collector, we just put it there. Incidentally, so you get some of the impact of this, ODOT in Access Oregon put in Meineke at $10 million so Hitchcock and the council wouldn't litigate what ODOT, Brennecke, and Langer had done. Now, I think that's a fair trade-off. You should always pay people off to keep their mouth shut. And that's exactly what went on here. Now, I only mention that because I really don't care what you do. The decision was already made. But I'm going to tell you directly, what you're doing tonight is more of the situational planning in Sherwood based on what political candidates you contributed to and how Pam Berry sees it. Thank you.
All right. I have no other blue cards for proponents, opponents, or other. So I will ask the applicant to return for rebuttal. And you have your 23 minutes.
All right, we
Don't-
should not take that long.
You know, and you don't have to use it all if you
Great,
don't
thank
want.
you. I think we'll just, if it's okay, just kind of go through point by point from what we heard, and Dan, just weigh in. And Peter, if you hear anything, our traffic engineer's here too, if he wants to correct or amend anything that we have to say. First of all, Mr. Anderson, thank you for your testimony. The alignment shown in this exhibit is illustrative. The actual map amendment proposed is shown in the traffic study. It shows the TSP map alignment that would actually be shown on the map. And I don't know, Brad, if it's in the PowerPoint. It is in the application, and it actually shows a flatter alignment going down into that area. That being said, as you know, it's a conceptual alignment, and the actual alignment design will be a function of whatever development comes in and how that happens. So I would say that the county would have no issue with it moving slightly either way. The intent is still the same. It's a collector to serve those properties.
It's on page 56. 56 on the application.
Oh,
If
thank you.
I don't know if it's out on the table or not, but it does show a parallel.
Right.
It's parallel, not curved.
Correct.
Okay. thank you very much for pointing that out, because that is more clear. Thank you.
And
All
then, in response to Renee, who we've seen at the neighborhood meeting, again, the intent is to stop the road as shown in the alignment. The county has no interest in continuing it further. I believe the comment about light to light, Dan may have been talking about that the intent is to bring traffic to existing lights. In this case, there's a signalized intersection at 99, so to bring that traffic to that light, not necessarily taking it across to another light. So hopefully that speaks to your question. And the third person, I'm sorry, I didn't catch her name. The question about circulation, how does this accomplish circulation? Yes, it is. It does end within the property. However, if you follow it to the east, it continues the Langer Farms Parkway loop for the area. So that is where the circulation is achieved by this particular alignment.
Also internal circulation.
Of course, and then the internal circulations for the properties, which would be served by this road. So
someone could take Langer Farms Parkway up and around, get over to this other side of the highway, and come back without going through the intersection you're trying to fix.
Right. They can cross safely across 99W and around down to Lawton Sherwood Road, or to all the businesses that would be served by the Baylor extension, which we'll talk about next. And those are our only responses to what we heard, unless, Dan, you have anything else to add?
No, I don't know if the last gentleman had a question in there or if it was just comment, so I'm not sure if there's a rebuttal to that.
Nothing that we need to do so.
Okay.
And then the comment about the fire marshal and the two accesses, we can't, the talk about the driveway that's onto Roy Rogers, can you clarify that again? Or I'm looking towards staff who raised his hand. Yes, Brad?
So, obviously, in a transportation system plan, we wouldn't discuss necessarily fire access to every piece of property.
Correct.
However, if somebody was to come in, like somebody purchased Mr. Anderson's property and wanted to come in and develop it out with an industrial use, and the fire marshal said, I need two accesses to this location. One would be through the proposed road tonight, and the second one then could be just limited to fire and emergency access only from the existing access off of Southwest Roy Rogers Road. And the statement comes from that typically, if the fire marshal doesn't get his flows or the mitigation necessary, a fire closet, additional water, or some other mitigation measures that the fire department uses to fight fires, they will require two accesses so that the trucks can access and have a clear in and out. So if the street was blocked, then they can come in through the back.
Okay, and this action that we're taking doesn't prevent that?
It does not.
Okay. So the concern about the connectivity to Orchards Road, is there a text language or some other agreement that we have as a tool in our toolbox to be able to put some assurance in the TSP when we make the recommendation to council?
You can certainly recommend, and here's my take on that, is this is a legislative decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the extent of this request is to show the alignment in its current location. And I say that it's highly unlikely that that connection will ever be made. But those ladies are absolutely right. That property owner might win the biggest lottery in the world and decide he wants to build a bridge and create a road across there. But he's going to have to come back in and go through this process all over again to establish that road across there. And it'll be through another public process. That is not being asked of you tonight to do that. And it would be uncharacteristic of you to say that we're never going to ever have any street go through, because you just never know what the circumstances are. When that property up there becomes more valuable to somebody as something other than residential land, they might rezone it. Hunter's Ridge in 50 years might not be there, and you have a big commercial complex or something, and it might be then financially prudent to extend the road across there. But It's not in the near-term future.
So-
And any,
So for their assurances, there would be another public hearing process that would be engaged if a road were to be proposed at all to connect to Borchers.
absolutely.
From this connection. Okay.
Absolutely. And I
That's-
hesitate
that
to
helps.
never say never, but
Right.
it's highly unlikely.
All right. Any more questions for the applicant before we close the public hearing? All right, then we will close the public hearing part of that and have final comments by staff.
Unless you have any questions, I have none.
Okay. Are there any further questions of staff regarding the Adams Avenue Langer Farms? Yes.
I'm sorry, I digress. So within the transportation, in their traffic study, they show that road running parallel. So my recommendation to you would be that any recommendation you make to the city council include that figure as the figure that you would want to go into the transportation system plan, because it wasn't clear to me, I guess, in my review of it, that that was anticipated to be the alignment that would go into the TSP.
Thank you very much.
So the map on 56.
Map on page 56.
Right.
Yes.
And I guess I'm of the feeling that I would agree that I would like to see some language that would indicate that it is our intention to not have that go through. I understand that there would be a public hearing later in the future, but we might not all be here. I've been the recipient of that kind of situation where things happen even as recently as 6 or 7 years ago, and nobody kind of remembers it, and people don't necessarily have the time to come again. And if there was a situation where we were able to put something like that in there that would allow it to not, that it is our intention to have it not go through, later if somebody wins the lottery, then they can come back and then they can try and get us to change their mind again with that body that's there at that time. I would feel more comfortable with that kind of a statement if it wouldn't be tying our hands too much, because I don't think we could always come back at it if we needed to.
It doesn't tie our hands. You're certainly welcome. You can make any recommendation you want to the
Okay.
council. And certainly they can put that language. By having it in there, it definitely demonstrates what your intent was in this discussion. Absolutely.
Okay.
I think by submitting it in the current alignment and having it stub at the end, and then maybe some kind of a paragraph that our intent is to support what the county said about, we just don't see a feasible way or any reason to continue the road. So this is where it is, and we can support that as a commission. It doesn't mean in 20 years.
Right, but then they have, at least someone will take a breath and look at it a little bit harder because we've made that step.
But we could certainly say we support them in the fact that they stubbed it, they stopped it. We agree with the points that they listed for the reason for doing that, and that sort of is our position, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if we could make a motion to that, we'll have staff craft the recommendation to, we don't need to craft that language tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You will
It would be nice if you did.
craft some form of language.
Yeah, we can do that. It's fine.
Okay.
I can make a
You
quick
can whip it
attempt
out,
at
can you,
Yeah.
James?
So, I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the Sherwood City Council on PA 1303, the Adams Avenue North TSP amendment, with the following modifications: that the map where it shows stubbed
On page 56.
Uses
on
page
page
56 of the.
it shows the intent that we are not looking at having that road go through to Borchers at any time.
And then
Noting
it not be curved.
that somebody may come in the future to look at that, but currently the intent of the commission and the residents of the Hunters Ridge area do not wish to have that go through. Based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report and applicant's materials.
I have a second.
Second.
All right, I have 2 seconds. It's been moved and double seconded that we approve PA 13-03. Adams Avenue. Oh boy.
Adams Avenue North TSP
Adams.
amendment.
The TSP amendment for Adams Avenue North. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Motion passes. All right. If we take a minute and prepare for the next hearing.
Do we want to? We don't need a break or anything, do we?
No, we just
Good.
would take 1 minute. We'll allow Commissioner Carey to return. All right. We are now going to have comments by Brad Kilby.
Can I just, on that last motion, I just want to make sure that it's on the record that it's page 56 of the packet materials. It's actually the map on page 5 of 6 of the DKS traffic analysis for that. And your intent is that map on page 56 within the materials, not 56 of the staff report or anything. So.
Correct.
Correct. Yes. Page 50. Yes.
So, yes, for the record, it's...
I just want to make sure I get it right when I send it to the council.
Yes.
Yeah. So page
All right.
50. Yeah.
56,
Right.
which is 5 of 6.
Right.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Now, I read the full disclosure with some sort of on-the-fly modification. All right, we are going to, call to order PA 1304. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning the PA 1304 Baylor Way Transportation System Plan update. This is a continuation from our last hearing, and the Commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. The staff will present a brief report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission. The applicant has 20 minutes remaining from their previous testimony to be split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each, and then there will be rebuttal remaining of their 20 minutes from their previous testimony. We will then close the public hearing. There'll be final comments by the staff, questions of staff, if any, by the Commission, discussion and deliberation by the Commission. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to the recording secretary. The Planning Commission Chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the Chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. Please speak clearly into the microphone. And again, the Planning Commission is making a recommendation to the City Council for final approval. And the Planning Department will now make a brief report and update us where we're at.
Sorry. Again, thank you, Commissioners. Just for a real quick recap, this proposal would be for the extension of Baylor Way. There's currently a signal right here. This is Les Schwab. This is an underdeveloped piece of industrial property with a commercial planned unit development overlay. It's industrial, I believe, light industrial. And this is the existing Sentinel storage. So the proposal that we've discussed last time and we'll be discussing again tonight is a designation on the TSP where it's currently not designated as a collector here, and then a future connection up here. It's the reason that this collector is not shown to go up here is because it's right now infeasible that they would be able to push that collector up there because of all the BPA and PGE power lines right there, and both of those agencies would probably oppose that. But this does get a collector to a collector at a signalized intersection, and then leave us the option of, in the future, extending some kind of local street up north to the northern extension of this same Langer Farms Parkway. And the reason it's important to have this connection up here is because these properties are zoned for commercial and light industrial development, and at some point in time will be developed. And consistent with the North Adams Avenue concept plan, it's likely that we would need some type of connectivity up through here. So we're asking that, or the county has asked through this proposal, that you leave this in as a local connector and designate this portion as a collector.
Okay.
This map here shows the Adams Avenue North concept plan. And as you can see, a large part of this area will remain undeveloped. You might get some trail or some local street connections through here. And there is a map, or already an existing arrow. This is a concept plan that was adopted. And you'll probably see the majority of the development occur up here and back here. Again, this is not currently in the transportation system plan, and the county is asking that you put it onto the transportation system plan, designated as a collector, which is a higher classification because it's anticipated that if the signal is removed at the cinema and Albertsons in that location and Baylor is the only signal, then you're going to have a lot more traffic in that corridor, and so it makes sense to have it a wider, higher class road. And they're, again, making this request under their, for safety and property access. And with that, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council to place the proposed collector onto the city's transportation system functional classification map in the configuration that I showed you back here. With that, unless you have any questions for me, that concludes my presentation to you.
All right, before we continue, I'd like to ask if anybody has any conflict, bias, or any ex parte contact that needs to be disclosed. No.
Actually, I have ex parte contact.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And legislative, it's not necessarily ex parte contact, but if you want to disclose it, you can. So.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Matt Linger about the project. And we spoke at length, and basically the bottom line came down to is I asked him what he thought about the fact that having Baylor Way come through the Les Schwab and that particular property that they have, and they were 100% for it.
Okay.
And so I was just curious what the landowners thought about the project.
Thank you. And Ty Wyman is going to be testifying tonight, and he contacted me Friday, Saturday to find out, I think it was more along the process and who was going to be able to testify and how much time they would have. So there's actually no engagement of any information, but it was someone who's testifying tonight, and we did speak. So, all right, there we go. So now we have.
Do you want to just, so there is no ex parte for
contact.
legislative, but do you have any conflict or bias?
Conflict or bias?
Nope.
I do not know.
No, we do not. All right, wonderful. We'll call the applicant, Stephanie et al. It's Dan. It's just your last name. I think I'm going to butcher it. So.
Again, I'm Stephanie Slyman with Harper Hoff Peterson Regelis, the applicant's representative, located at 205 Southeast Spokane Street, Suite 200, Portland, Oregon. We have no new information to share with you tonight. The county has not met with TACFAL. As Russ Knobel pointed out at the start of the hearing, those design details that they had asked for would not be forthcoming in this timeline, nor are they relevant to the approval criteria or the level of detail that is incumbent upon a TSP amendment, which again is an alignment and a functional classification designation. So I just want to reiterate those points and defer the rest of our time for any questions or rebuttal.
All right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Simpson?
Yes.
My last name is Erpenbach.
Erpenbach. Thank you.
I know it's a tough one, but I was born with it.
Erpenbach. Okay.
Erpenbach. Thank you. All right. We have several blue cards for tonight. We have, let's see, starting with proponents, Phil Grillo. Oh, nice.
How you doing, Phil? Thank you.
Thank you. So we were just handing something. Is this entered into the record as which exhibit? D, maybe? I believe it's exhibit D.
Mm-hmm.
We have a,
We have a
it's
C.
the Davis Wright Tremaine letter from last.
Oh, I'm sorry.
E?
E?
Is that what you said?
No, D is in Delta.
All right, so we're going to submit into the record Exhibit D, which is a letter from Davis Wright Tremaine dated January 28th. All right, I believe we're ready.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Phil Grillo. I'm here on behalf of Tactful Properties. My address is on the letter that I just submitted. What I wanted to do today is just briefly update you on the status for our conversations with Washington County. I think you basically know the outcome of those, but I want to explain a little bit, and then secondly, kind of talk to you a little bit more about what our position is based upon the fact that we weren't able to have additional discussions with the county. First, with regard to what's happened since the hearing on the 10th, we appreciate the fact that you continued this to allow us the opportunity to explore alternative access a little bit more and hopefully to have some discussions with the county about that. Since that time, we've hired W&H Pacific to help us refine the alternative access that we need with regard to this project. And we have provided a copy of that to you as Exhibit A to our letter, and I have a oversized version of it on the easel there today. Our intent was to have this exhibit be something that we would be able to discuss and refine with the county and the city, and to bring that to you as an agreement that we could integrate into your decision. Despite those efforts, the county informed us that they didn't want to have further discussions with us until the LUBA decision was completed and until the TSP amendment was approved. So we really didn't have much choice in that matter, but we continued to do our homework. So with that, I want to talk to you about what our position is here today. We continue to support the TSP amendment, but conditionally. So you'll see in pages 2 and 3, I've outlined basically 3 conditions of approval that we want you, excuse me, 2 conditions of approval that we want you to add to the decision if indeed you choose to approve it. The first condition is that prior to the elimination of our traffic signal and left turn lanes on 12 and Sherwood Road, that the county provide alternative access that is reasonably consistent with the concept shown here for alternative access. And just real briefly, basically what it does is it slightly refines how our center would connect with the extension of Baylor Way. It also reflects the entrance off of Highway 99 that has been orally approved by ODOT, and then just makes enough conceptual comments on there so that we're not trying to engineer this. We're just trying to give you a conceptual idea of what the access should be. Condition number 2 has 3 parts to it, and I'll just briefly talk about those. First, we would ask that, again, prior to the elimination of the traffic signal and left turn lanes, that tactful site plan approvals be amended consistent with this alternative access plan. Obviously, our access is governed by what's in our approved site plan, so we want to be sure that our site plans are consistent with the access that ultimately happens there. B, we'd ask that you amend Figure 810 of the Sherwood TSP if you're going to allow the signal to be eliminated and left turns to be eliminated. You're going to need to amend your TSP to do that, and that would require amendment to Figure 810. And finally, also amend Table 811 of the TSP to eliminate Project 15, which strangely enough calls for the elimination of the signal at Baylor and blocking its crossing of Sherwood, Tualatin Sherwood Road. So in order to be consistent, you need to make that change as well. So that's really what I wanted to inform you about today. That's our position. The last thing I'm going to just leave you with is one other letter which explains why this why what we're talking about is relevant to the applicable policies of the city's TSP and comprehensive plan, because I understand the county's position is that what we're talking about is not relevant, and I want to be sure that you understand that it is and why.
Okay. All right. So we will, your testimony time is up, but we'll have you turn in that, and it'll be Exhibit E as an echo. And before he leaves, do you have any questions for Mr. Grillo? All right. I appreciate your time in doing that for us.
Thank you.
Exhibit E. All right. All right. The next I have opponent Ty Wyman. There, are you coming, Baron? Karenite. So there are two of you testifying together?
If we could. We're on behalf of the same entity, so.
Okay. So that would be 8 minutes then, 4 minutes per each.
Thank you very much, Chair Simpson, members of the commission. My name is Ty Wyman, address 851 Southwest 6th Avenue, Suite 1500, Portland 97204. And I come before you tonight as attorney for Merlone Geyer Partners. Merlone Geyer is the managing member of MGP 10. That's MGP Roman 10, so spelled out it can look like MGPX, but it's MGP 10 Properties LLC, which owns and operates, as of a few months ago, the Sherwood Market Center, which is the Albertsons-based center at this location. And being pointed out by Baron Karenite, who sits to my left, Mr. Karenite is Director of Land Development for Merlone Geyer, which owns and operates retail centers up and down the West Coast, and his background is in civil engineering. So we're going to divide our labor here. My background is in the land use process. In fact, I was here a couple of weeks ago. I got an opportunity, my first opportunity in some time, to speak to you about that process. But we rise tonight in opposition for one simple reason. The county is rather bent on removing the traffic signal that is the main entrance, constitutes the main entrance to the Sherwood Market Center. And removal of that signal would frankly decimate the center. And the perspective that I would offer you is that you have before you a legislative process, which I think affords you some luxury, particularly given the testimony that you just received from Mr. Grillo. As a legislative process, we're not under a 120-day rule. We really have some time to think about what we're doing here, and that is exactly what we're going to ask you to do. And timing, I think, in my opinion, has really not been the county's strong suit here. You may know that the county rendered a decision last September to remove the signal and widen the traffic lanes and undertake a road project in front of the two properties, the Tackfall property as well as MGP's property. That decision was appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, which is now giving it its due consideration. Even if should LUBA disclaim jurisdiction over the matter, it would simply at that point be transferred to circuit court. The challenge to the signal removal decision, in other words, is I would venture, a quite serious matter, and we're going to have a substantive decision on it here, a meaningful decision on it within a 2-week time span. What really, I think, galls us a bit about this request is that it's premised on removal of the signal at 12 and Sherwood Road, which, as I've just explained, is not a foregone issue. And secondly, it directly contradicts what's in your transportation system plan. Folks like Merlone Geyer, their predecessor in Interest Regency, landowners across this state rely on the comprehensive planning system. I am, given that I have 4 minutes rather than 30, I'm going to not give you my full download on comprehensive planning, but for it to have meaning, property owners must be able to put reasonable expectations into it. We all saw the plan as investments were made in these properties, and I would submit to you, folks were entitled to rely on plans that showed the existence of this traffic signal. That's certainly a point that we made at the Land Use Board of Appeals. We will make it to a circuit court if we need to do that. So what you have before you, I think, is not comprehensive planning. What you have before you really is sort of ad hoc traffic engineering. We've got this summary signal removal decision. We've got this decision tonight, which is premised on that. And then now we even hear about a TSP process that's underway that, oh, well, we may remove the signal from the TSP in this process. Well, you know, we've got the cart, pardon me, wholly in front of the horse here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Karenite.
Baron Karenite, 425 California Street, San Francisco. I think just following on here and trying to keep it simple, in terms of, can you go to the previous slide, too? In terms of the counties, go one more, please. In terms of the county's four-pronged approach you see there, ultimately tonight was before you is just the off-corridor issue. And I think ultimately in order to modify this plan, we'd like to see all of those issues addressed. So if in fact the traffic signal is to be removed, that public notification would be made for the removal of that signal, and there would be a discussion of that. In addition to that, that the access element that is being addressed here would show the removal of the traffic signal from your city transportation plan, as reflected in the figure 8-10, the traffic control master plan. In addition to that, the technical memoranda and the documents that are submitted as evidence to the action before you would have an analysis of what the removal of the signal, what the impact would actually be. And so the evidence you have currently, the traffic analysis that's been presented by DKS, just assumes that traffic signal has been removed. That's an assumption that is in your record for consideration. However, no action, as far as I know, has been taken to do that. And then finally, I think all of that would be bundled together into a modification to your TSP that addresses all four of these issues that are resulting from the 12th and Sherwood Road project. So in lieu of adding a road to your program tonight, assuming in the analysis that the traffic signal has been removed, and not addressing in any way what ITS, the impact of the intelligent traffic system or the syncing of the signals would have on this corridor, we don't feel that it's been fully analyzed and frankly fully vetted to make this modification to the plan. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
I think he's got
So while we regret in some measure rising in opposition, I can't remember the last time I rose in opposition, frankly, that's where we find ourselves. We would be very happy, and we have spoken with the county. I did on behalf of Regency for many, many months. We would be happy to continue those discussions. But right now, we simply would ask you not to make a decision, certainly to forward a recommendation of approval to your city council. Again, we thank you very much for your time.
All right. Are there any questions of the opponents?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we have this right. So are you asking to have this continued further down the road?
We've already continued it once.
We're asking to have the matter continued. Well, I'm gonna leave that up to you. Frankly, we would love it if you. I think we would prefer it at this point if you just passed along a strong negative recommendation to the council. But that, in some way, is going to drop something in their lap. I think to the extent that you can instruct everybody to go back out into the proverbial hallway and sit down around a big table, and it'd be a big table, but it's an important enough issue. Yeah, I think maybe a continuance. And we've both Merlone Geyer and TACFAL have presented alternative. We both hired traffic professionals, traffic engineers, and presented alternatives to the county. We are not just stuck in the, just say no. So was that? That's a long way.
Thank you.
Hopefully it responded.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, with the loss of this signal, you're pretty much left with two entrances, right?
Oh, yeah,
into the property.
Yeah. So the loss of the signal represents, left movement, no left movements.
Right.
And so there's no left out of the property. There would be no left in. And the circulation, as much as people identify that there's more than one driveway into this property can only at that point be approached from one aspect. That is as much as we heard earlier today at the opening of this hearing about some restaurateurs that are in the neighborhood that are very concerned about how access works and the impact that it has on their business. We remain very concerned for our tenants and, frankly, for our ownership as to access modifications to the property.
Sure. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I have one more blue card. Our clause. Oh, move to the other side. Glasses on.
Robert James Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. I hope you notice I marked other on this. When you have any opinion about this, it's your problem. It got created by this group and the city council, and you just heard somebody say something. Now I talked to Mr. Green, and I know as a lawyer he can advise you on all of this, because when I talked to him at Penn State and Michigan, they all knew him. He's a head transportation engineer. You're really hotshot. Oh, wait a minute. I don't think they'd heard of him. So I'm going to mention something to you because maybe something you need to think about. You do not have the data to make this decision. Now, that won't stop you from making the decision, because the decision in this town are made economically. They're not made professionally. What is the origin destination of the trips you're talking about? What's their timelines? Now, I heard somebody use the most ridiculous phrase I've heard, 100,000 eyeballs. But talk to the Federal Department of Transportation, get his numbers right, because that's not the number of eyeballs there. That daily effective circulation and viewers is a specific professional term. I heard it used and I thought, whoa. I wish somebody used that in a court of law with a good outdoor attorney. And we just call Mr. Green, he could handle it. What I'm trying to tell you is very simple. You don't have a dot map of what this area is going to bring in. Are you aware you're working with more square footage than Washington Square now? On 16,000 people, you're working on more square footage than Washington Square? Are you aware you're changing the profile coming into this town? And you've never been given a dot map. Now, all of that's available. But I've testified either for or against this signage programs. That's the first thing we did. We did a dot map. Now, I'm sure, again, you've got plenty of expertise to know how to put one of those together immediately. You're just loaded with expertise in this here. You've got origin, destination, you've got a profile of the motorist, you've got the hours they're going to come. And let me try to tell you something else. There's only one sign that we've ever been traced that will cause accidents, and that's a stop sign. That's right, it's a stop sign. Travis Brooks, man that wrote the manual on uniform traffic control devices. We identified that. You've had none of that in here. What you've had is a decision made as Home Depot, and then you've started dragging your transportation net behind it. You could do that in typical Sherwood. You drive the refuge. You don't plant willows, but you talk to the refuge people. I've heard all of this. But I would just suggest that you get someone that can testify at the National Academy of Science Transportation Research Board to run a panel, come out here and tell you what you've done. Mr. Green likes, I'll nominate him for that panel. I've run one of them. Actually, I've run 3 of them, but that's another matter. But all I'm trying to tell you is you don't have any data. Where were they when Walmart went in, when it was recorded, when they knew the profile and they knew certain days they generate 37,000 cars? God, where's 1,000 Friends of Oregon when you need them?
Okay, I do not have any other blue cards at this time. Okay, then we will call the applicants back up for their rebuttal. Stephanie Slyman and Dan Herpenbach. Or
somebody.
Others.
Or others.
It's okay. I'd like to invite Peter Coffey to join me.
Okay.
He is the traffic engineer, as I previously said. So thank you to both Phil Grillo and Ty Wyman for their testimony. We appreciate the thought they've put into it. And certainly there's a lot of information on the table here we're just receiving for the first time, as you are.
That's a really good point. Would the commission like 5 minutes to read what was handed to us before we continue? I'm just thinking I would like a couple minutes to read the 2 exhibits that were handed to us. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess so that we have an opportunity to read these exhibits before we continue, if that's all right. So we will have a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
Just don't discuss amongst yourselves.
We won't discuss.
As well.
Make sure. All right, we are reconvening the applicant rebuttal opportunity on PA 1304 Baylor Way Transportation System Plan Amendments.
Thank you. As I previously stated, thank you to the proponents and opponents for their testimony. First, we'd like to address the new information submitted by Phil Grillo, and I believe we've all had a chance to skim through this. I guess our first response is to reiterate our position. Again, this is a high-level plan map amendment about access, creating better access in the area through the addition of Baylor Way. It is not about access details. It's not about site development. So the issues that are brought forth in this letter regarding such site details and access, again, are being handled through a separate right-of-way process for Chewalt and Sherwood Road. We're starting to get apples and oranges mixed together here. So just to be aware of that those conditions for site plan approvals, again, are not part of what we are asking for your recommendation on tonight. For those specific proposals here about amending your TSP further, we on the surface, don't have any problem with that. However, we would not like to include that as part of this TSP amendment, which is trying to be as straightforward as possible about creating access at Baylor. It has not contemplated these other items at this time. So if the city, as part of its current TSP update, would like to entertain those, I think that's another way you could address those. So essentially, this letter can be handled in two ways. Items that deal with access and design can be addressed through the right-of-way process for 12 and Sherwood Road, the road widening. As you know, any road widening has property impacts, off-site impacts, and those are now being commingled in a larger discussion about your access for the city circulation. So that would be the response to that testimony. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Peter, in particular.
This is Peter Coffey with DKS Associates, 720 Southwest Washington Street, Suite 500, Portland, Oregon. And as Stephanie talked about, this proposed amendment is to add a collector facility to the TSP to improve circulation, and it is a standalone project. And I think the questions are: does it improve access and circulation to the area? Yes, it does. Does the amendment meet the requirements of the state's transportation planning rule, OAR 660-012-0060? Does it meet those requirements? Yes, it does. And in terms of the transportation analysis, did we do the appropriate amount and level of traffic analysis for the study? And the answer would be yes, as the staff found out. So we've met those requirements. Stephanie's talked about a lot of details being brought up about site circulation and access, and that's not the process for the TSP to address.
Any questions on that particular rebuttal?
I have a question. You said that this was a standalone project, a standalone application. And if that is the case, if the stoplights in question in front of the cinema and Albertsons were not going to be removed, in the remodeling of 12th and Sherwood Road, would the county still be bringing this TSP plan to us?
Yes, it would. And in fact,
if the stoplights were to stay there and we're not going anywhere, and that intersection didn't change, you're saying that the county still would be making this recommendation?
that's correct. And in fact, the rebuttal to Ty Wyman's testimony, he stated that this is premised on the removal of Baylor of the signal. That is not the case. It's not premised on the removal of that signal. It's premised on the fact that the county is trying to manage access and circulation in 4 different ways, and this is one of the ways. When you look at the map, it makes sense to continue Baylor northward through the North Adams concept plan area. It aligns with the city's previous plans for the area for circulation. It helps to manage circulation on Tualatin and Sherwood Road and provide better access, more access for those businesses than they have today. So in answer to your question, undoubtedly the county would be proposing Baylor Way with or without that signal going away, and that's a separate conversation.
So,
North.
okay, I was just going to ask Brad, because it was my understanding that given the number of signals there, that Baylor Way signal would not be considered without the removal of the other signal.
It's already there.
Correct.
There's already a signal at Baylor.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's any further rebuttal we'd have to offer to the testimony other than what we've said so far. I guess in summary, and Peter can back this up as someone who has dealt with many TSP amendments, it would be a bad precedent to condition a high-level planning TSP amendment on these on-the-ground details for a separate project.
So I have a question on the lights on 12th and Sherwood. We're talking about the Albertsons one, the Baylor one. How is the impact of the Langer Farms Parkway light going to, because it is pretty close to the Baylor Way light as well.
Right. I mean, really, the key, what we found is Highway 99, the amount of vehicle storage and the close spacing to Highway 99, 12 Sherwood Road, that signal is the critical bottleneck intersection of the corridor. That's where you get the longest queues, vehicle queues formed. And the issue is with the close spacing is the long vehicle queues extending from one intersection to another intersection. So down at Baylor and Adams, the signals are closer together than we may desire, but there's still enough there's enough capacity at the intersection to service the vehicles so we don't get those long vehicle queues. The long vehicle queues you see out there in the street today, where are they caused from? They start at 99W, and then they head to the east. And that's really the origin of them, and that's the issue.
So the design that you presented at the open house with the removal of the lights included removal of turn lanes, and that's how they're going to get additional queuing.
Storage space.
They're going to do
Right.
storage space by removing left turn lanes. They get more forward lanes across.
We can get longer left turn pockets and more storage, and we're adding capacity as well to 99W. We're adding left turn lanes and through lanes as well, so it's a combination of those two things.
That's why so many other people came to us before, because when they went to the open house, they saw a map already designed without those left turns on them.
I'm just curious of how we're going to impact, Bay of the Way, and we're just going to be backing the signaling up further, or the traffic back up further up 12th and Sherwood. I drive that every day, and it's horrible.
Yep.
Well, I think part of that is, if you ever been behind someone coming from Tualatin who is coming upon the intersection with 99 for the first time, and they realize there's only one yellow brick road to go all the way across to Roy Rogers, and if you're in the wrong lane at the wrong time and it's a busy time, they just have panic in their eyes. So, and it's right there at that point where we need the extra space, and right now that space is being used up by those left turn lanes. That space needs to be so those two lanes can go further back. So
Right.
as far as queuing, I completely agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with taking away lights, but I certainly understand the situation.
Oh, I understand the situation as well. I don't know what the ideal solution is.
Right. And we're trying to focus really on tonight on the Baylor extension and not all the elements on the signal remover and that.
They're tied together.
They're saying they're not.
I have
They
another
are.
question.
Well, what we're saying is, I think, whether we remove the signal or not, doing this TSP amendment is still relevant and still beneficial to the circulation of the area. Is what we're saying.
And it's one piece of the puzzle. As
Yeah.
you well know, there's many elements, and just because you can't do them all doesn't mean you don't do any. So.
Okay.
You had
So-
a question of the. Oh,
I'm still on this.
okay. Drive it home then.
Well, now curiosity, has that much changed with the traffic in this particular light that it's now, it's been there for 22 years now, 24 years? The signal
The
at
shopping center one.
Yeah. I mean, did we misforecast what the traffic was going to be like at this light 20 years down the road?
Well, when they originally put in the traffic signal, they talked about the close spacing of that signal to 99W and the need for how long it would stay there, and that alternative access to the cinema site would need to be developed. And that's what's, Baylor extension, the TSP amendment helps develop that. Because I think if you go back to the prior studies from a long time ago, they knew the signal was too close to 99W at the time. And that's where they could gain their access. So they gained their access, documenting that alternative access needed to be developed at a future date.
So who's responsible for letting that light to go in the first place if we knew it was in the wrong spot?
Well, I think at the time, you have to consider the time when those decisions were made. And given where the situation was at the time, there was no options for alternative access. Now there are options. We're trying to find options for alternative action. Traffic volumes are significantly greater, today than they were when that first went in, and you can see the ramifications of it. I mean, the left turn lanes are too short, right? You drive through the traffic congestion every day. The left turn lanes need to be longer. There needs to be more space for queuing. There needs to be more distance between the signal. Those are all the things that the county's been going through and analyzing.
All right. You had a question? No. Okay. So do we have any more questions of the applicant before we close the public testimony?
Okay. I'm
Yes?
good. I'm good.
Okay. All right,
No,
then we
thank
will
you.
close the public testimony and call on staff for any further comments.
I'm going to actually ask Bob to respond to some of this. I want him to chime in as the engineer. He's familiar with the project, and I think he's much more savvy to the technical aspects of the traffic and the reason for the signal and the reason for the right-of-way extension. I think you have good questions, and I'll chime in if
So do you have any questions in particular about what's been presented?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to word it like I want it to, but I'll give it a go. So I understand the concept. We're looking at saying, making a decision of adding some more connectivity, kind of to the master plan.
True.
Pretty much it. Now, which really has, our decision today really has zero effect on the signaling for the cinemas and Albertsons. Correct or incorrect?
I think that the decision today should be taken independently in context with from the rest of the project. I believe that the whole project itself is an aspect of the project. It's created by the project itself, but it needs to be taken in and of itself as what is this thing geared towards? It's how does this whole system work? Is the signal the only component that this amendment is geared to solve? No. That's erroneous. The TSP amendment, like any TSP, is to try and take the whole system, analyze it, and try and find a way to make it better given constraints. And it's a system improvement, not based on any one item. So the signal, you can't take the signal predicates the TSP amendment itself. Doesn't work that way. I think what you have to say is the whole project, because the whole project affects the whole area, this TSP amendment has a benefit to the system operating at a better capacity, a better functionality for the entire area based on the whole project being done.
So this provides connectivity, and a comment being made about the information provided to us was that Washington County did provide traffic information and the connectivity that this collector would provide to that area. And as staff, you
We reviewed it.
And were there any
Caveats that came out of that? None that like what DKS specifically said, it did meet the RTP requirements for connectivity. It's met the criteria. We base it on the criteria.
So following the process, it's met the process for providing connectivity within that area.
Correct.
And we're following the guidelines. It does what it's meant to do. And I thought one of the comments that was made previously is it does no harm. Whether it does any good is yet to be seen by the rest of the project.
Correct.
And the expectation is providing additional connectivity to the commercial and industrial all the way up to Home Depot was envisioned when the North Adams Avenue Comprehensive Plan was put together.
Correct.
That was what the vision
Right.
had seen, was that, there would be lots of things that could happen in that area, but connectivity was one of them.
Correct.
When we approve that concept plan, we have to have this road in there. And that was part of it.
Right, and that concept plan had it connecting across to the frontage road to the industrial area further to the east and all the way up to Home Depot, and that was part of that. I'd like to ask staff, what's the process for, we don't do site plan review at this process, so what's the process for citizens to be engaged at the next level, when the project comes to that site plan specific, when the light comes in, or whether it's being lanes are added or removed. How do the citizens of Sherwood feel like they have a way to engage with this process?
I would suspect that the first aspect of this would be through the county's work in getting right-of-way negotiations, things like that with the local business owners. They have to, the expectation that the city has always presented to the county is that the functionality, the viability of the businesses remain during construction and after construction, the same as it was before construction. To the best of their ability, it's there. They're going to be in business. They aren't going to be forced out. They aren't going to be destroyed. They aren't going to be anything like that. We've always presented that as the major component of how this project goes together. So during this phase of the design, their right-of-way acquisition, all those sort of things that are going to be going through, the businesses and the business owners and the property owners are going to be in contact with Washington County, and they're going to be negotiating these things to their best to support them and make them whole, basically. And the city will work with that aspect as well with the county to try and make sure that that is accomplished. I think the second aspect of this is that when development does occur and we start putting things inside the development comes through, that public input will again be part of this whole process for the site. And that will be, again, more public input on how is this road working, what's going to happen, how are we going to do this. Another item that we've got is the TSP update itself. There are lots of things that we're going through right now. This project could be a part of that. It will be a part of the update itself. So there's community interest, community response at the Planning Commission level, at the City Council level when we have the public hearings as part of that process. So this is going to come up again as a possible discussion item on what's going on, how is this going to be worked, what's the project going to look like, is it viable, what are we going to do, how do we protect the public, how do we progress this thing. I think there's a couple of different ways that are still available and that they're still going to be coming up that public input can be brought into bear on how this project proceeds.
So if this doesn't get approved, how is that going to impact the Tualatin-Sherwood Highway, the Tualatin-Sherwood Road project?
I would have to ask that would go back to the applicants on what they see as how this would be a detriment to the project's ability to move forward. Again, I think that the main thing that I keep thinking about is what does this particular TSP amendment do? And it's basically trying to help connectivity on a system-wide change. And this is what they're talking about the Tualatin-Sherwood Road, is a system-wide, a major change that is impacting a system, a very large system. And that this TSP amendment is a part of that change. It helps the connectivity, it mitigates it to an extent. It brings the system back into balance.
Temporarily. I have a concern about the Baylor Way and the Langer Farm Parkway lights being so close together, another 20 years down the road.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, because we're looking at, we didn't foresee this light being so close to 99 being an issue, and all of a sudden now it's an issue. Now we're looking, okay, now we're going to put two more lights right next to each other. What, are we going to have the same issue, in 2025 or 2030? I mean, it's hard to tell the future, but
it's hard to tell the future. I think that you would, if we were to bring up DKS, your coffee, to discuss what was in the transportation plan for Walmart, if we were to go back that far and how all that would work and everything like that, and then he could discuss what their transportation report was for this particular project and the impacts and what you could foresee in this as far as how much delay there is at the intersection, trying to get through all these intersections with or without the project going through. I tend to sit there and listen very carefully to that and say, okay, is it a perfect fix for 100 years? Is it the perfect fix? Is it going to do everything that we want it to do? I don't think so. We can't see what's going to happen 100 years out, and I don't think any system could survive that long in its original configuration and still work appropriately. Not something like this, not transportation-wise. But I do believe that they've looked at it well enough to know that if they don't do something based on just simple growth patterns, we're looking at some very significant issues in the short term, within 5 years, if growth continues.
Oh, sure.
That are not related to Sherwood growth.
Mhm.
We're talking growth outside of Sherwood
Yeah.
that
Through
is
Sherwood.
through Sherwood.
The two
that will
arterials.
continue.
Yeah.
And I believe that the calculations that DKS provided that I saw gives me a bit of confidence that they are doing the right thing when they're looking at the system and trying to provide these alternatives.
My concern is really for these business owners that, and it goes around this light still, and I don't, we're saying today, if we make this decision or not make this decision today, it affects not the light whatsoever, correct? Whether it's going to go away or not.
But I think we need to change the language and the findings and put a caveat on it, just like we did with the Stubb Street on the previous application. On page 6 of the staff report, it says, it should be noted that future development or the improvement would likely require the city to evaluate and possibly relocate existing access locations for the purposes of improving safety along the future collector. I would like a caveat on our TSP or something like we did with the Stubb Street that said, and the process for doing that would be an engaged public process, so that, I understand it's Washington County's facility, but it goes through the heart of our city. And we so many times feel like between ODOT on Highway 99, 12th and Sherwood Road, we don't have a say in what happens in our community. And I don't know how to make it feel like we are able to control our community and what happens within it.
So the potential conflict and the access that I'm speaking to at that intersection has nothing to do with the signal at the light. It's the existing access of Les Schwab onto Baylor and how close that is, and that's exactly what I was talking about in there. So I don't want that taken out of context. It has nothing to do with the access along 12th and Sherwood Road. It's the access location. If this is made into a collector, now you have a driveway right at or close to the intersection, and those need to be evaluated. Those impacts need to be evaluated. And I just wanted to add a couple of things, just if I could take a few minutes of your time just for a second. The question of whether or not this application would come forward, whether or not that signal was being removed. That's a fundamental question. It's a good question. I think it's a valid question, and I think that you're right to ask it. The other thing that I think that you have to keep in mind is that every comprehensive plan document, including your transportation system plan, is a living document. So what we have in place today may not work for what's going to happen 20 years down the road. Mm-hmm. So we do have to adjust as time goes on and as conditions change, and we need to be cognizant of that. I don't want to hurt any business any more than you do, and you're on the dais. You're the one that's making the recommendation to the council, and the council's in the same position. They make the final decision on this. But ultimately, those hard decisions have to be made by somebody. Mm-hmm. And it may not be a decision that you like to make, and we can add whatever language it is that you want to the recommendation. But the question tonight is whether or not this transportation system plan should be amended to include this as a collector, independent of that light. And I would say that the council has already expressed their support in removal of the signal to the county.
They did.
And so I don't know that you're going to change their mind on that aspect by making any recommendation tonight about predicating your decision on this on that signal. And there is a question at LUBA right now of whether or not that was a land use decision. And there are other questions that are going to come down the road, and I'm sure that when it gets to the Court of Appeals, there's going to be questions about it. That signal has its own set of problems. The question before you tonight is does it make sense to have a collector in this location? And if you don't believe it does, then you should be sending a recommendation up to the council that says, we recommend that you do not make this amendment to the transportation system plan. But if, on the other hand, you feel like this is something that needs to happen in the future, regardless of whether that light remains or not, then you need to make a recommendation to the council to approve the amendment.
All right. Any further questions of staff at this time?
Nope.
All right. So I am.
Discuss, deliberation.
Any further deliberation, discussion, comments?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and Harry, what do you have to say, James?
Yeah. You need to use your microphone.
Sorry.
Get them to hear us.
So I've been looking through this information, and this is a, as it was brought up by the applicant, this is a high-level TSP, and I don't disagree with the comment that it's a bad precedence to set a bunch of set in a bunch of conditioning with a high-level TSP. Seeing this as a high-level TSP, I think it's just that. It's a plan. I think that it isn't a time-sensitive plan. I think it is. I look at the information provided, and I do see that there's a lot of information that we don't have. And I do believe that both these intersection projects are tied together. And we do have some conflicting plan language based on looking at this. With this, I don't see where continuing this forward for any period of time is going to be harmful in getting the information necessary or
Feel like you're being pushed into making a decision without all your information.
yeah. I mean, when you look at the conflicts within the current TSP surrounding the other signal.
But I would ask for the connectivity on this collector, which was part of the comprehensive plan for Langer Farms Parkway. What other information?
I don't
would be-
disagree. I don't disagree I don't disagree with the collector. I don't disagree with Baylor Way going across. I just
Okay, and that's what we're
I just
deciding on.
am looking at.
So when it goes to be actually put in will be when we talk about access to the
Correct.
back of the cinemas and that kind of thing. That's the time when we would be discussing what kind of access that will be affording those people.
So
They become site plan modifications, so they're going to be modifying those site plans. And anytime you modify the access in such a way to affect off-site traffic, you're going to go through either a major or minor modification to the transportation or to your site plan review. So I do foresee other opportunities of public involvement through that process of establishing those access points and locations. So I would say that I understand what Mr. Kopfer is saying, and if you're all leaning that way and you want additional information, be specific in your direction.
So do we have figure 8.10 or 8-10 and 8-11 here that we can look at, for instance? I mean, I
do.
With the
and
particulars
sure.
of what we're looking at as far as, what the language says between this Baylor extension and how it correlates in the current TSP with the other intersection based on this 8-10 and 8-11, which I personally have not read.
That's
in the current TSP. I do have it available. You're welcome to take another recess if y'all feel that you need to do that. It's
Whether or not
but the applicant's not asking for us to make that change,
No,
that
I know.
amendment.
whether or not we hold this decision hostage based on the light, it makes no difference whatsoever. I mean, this it needs to go through, unfortunately, based on our previous approval of the concept plan. But I fear that
Unless the language of the current plan is in conflict, which
That's
is what they're saying. And that's why I'm saying I haven't
our
read
current TSP.
8-10 or 8-11, so I mean, I can't tell. I mean, without reading it, is the language truly in conflict? Or, does that make sense? I mean, because
Yeah.
based on this, they're saying that,
They're
if
bringing up
if
some
we
issues.
say this passes, well, then it's in conflict with what's currently in the TSP under
So-
8-10 and 8-11.
So
How do you
let's
address
take
that?
let's take a 3-minute recess. Look at 8-10 and 8-11 to answer
Okay.
the question if it provides conflict or not, and then reconvene after the commission has had an opportunity to look at that. And since we were making a recommendation and not the final, we'll make sure that those two documents are added as exhibits to this application. And if, Brad, you would, for the record, tell for the record what information you provided to the Planning Commission.
What I showed you was figure 8.10, which is the traffic control master plan that shows all the locations in the city of Sherwood that are signalized by a red dot. And I think that the conflict that's being raised or discussed is that there is currently, it's shown in your transportation system plan that you have a signal at that location. And
Which we do.
You do. You have a signal there. And and I told this to a couple of folks I met with today, if during the process of our transportation system plan update, the overall transportation system plan update that is occurring at the city level now, that signal is removed, this dot will have to come off this map. It's an amendment to our transportation system plan. Again, it's a living document, so things are going to change along the way. It goes along the same route as Elwert being changed from a county rural collector to a more urban collector and widening the street. So there's always going to be changes or amendments to that. 8-11.
I think we need a table 811, which is a list
Oh,
of
okay.
projects.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a listing of a project.
So in
yeah,
table 811,
Project 15.
Project 15 is the Langer Drive and Tualatin Sherwood Road within the traffic control enhancements of city-funded projects. It says remove traffic signal, install raised median. So that was, the cost was $100 million or something. Is that right? 100,000 or $100 million? Bob, no, it wouldn't be 100 million. It's 100,000.
So then that is a
Okay,
conflict.
good.
Hey,
Smaller numbers.
Yes, very small. Sorry, the number's up there. Again, it's saying that in 2005, the last time that this was evaluated, our transportation system plan, one of the planned traffic control enhancements would have been to remove the traffic signal at Sherwood Boulevard and Langer Drive. I believe that Langer Drive and Tualatin Sherwood Road. Right now, I do not believe
There
that
isn't
there
one.
is a signal at Langer Drive and Tualatin Sherwood Road.
No.
And Bob might be able to
There's
speak to
not.
what the intent of
It's a
that was.
stop sign.
Ever.
The Langer Drive connects into Baylor it tees into Baylor
Right.
at the Walmart, or at the Target store
Right.
site. And you take a left and you go down. There is a signal at Baylor and Tualatin Sherwood Road, but not at Langer.
So
So the information provided seems.
Well, what happened is that development took a different course in that area, and the land use actions in that area changed how the road structure was put in, such that Langer didn't wrap around to connect in, basically teed into another connector road that created a subdivision.
So if we were to choose to approve the TSP, that would automatically alter that portion of the. I mean, previously it says we're going to take the signal out in that list of projects. That would remove
I think if
that
you're taking
project.
it, I think if you're taking it technically as trying to, what's the intent, and say that you're going to approve this TSP amendment, that the system plans would have to be changed
Sure.
in the update to reflect the amendment and the
Mhm.
intent of what that amendment means.
And then, that still leaves this Baylor extension and collector piece of the TSP as its own separate entity from the other intersection. Correct?
I think we'd have to modify everything to take into account the change and everything, instead of it being like a Langer Drive intersection with a signal at Langer and 12th and Sherwood Road. We'd have to modify all the maps and make sure that the intersection appropriately would be signed as Baylor and 12th and Sherwood Road.
Right, but this decision is a separate decision from any decision made on that intersection that we were talking about at the theater.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're clear now. We have the information.
We're clear now.
Okay. Any more questions regarding staff on the proposed TSP amendment?
Mm-mm.
And further discussion and deliberation?
Only that when we do a motion, would we include? I mean, do we want to specify that this is? I guess we don't need to specify anything as far as reiterating that this is
What our intent is.
the intent is just for the Baylor extension and not to include the other intersection. I mean, is that self-explanatory in the
because
TSP application
It's
well
the
enough?
application is only
Right.
for
Okay.
the
Okay.
connectivity.
Okay.
Any other comments regarding this? Russ, you've been awful.
You've been awful.
I know.
Quiet.
And
I
you've
mean,
been
I'm
awful
quiet.
quiet. Quiet.
Are you
Quiet.
feeling okay?
One of the things that as a member of the community that is so hard to do is to I use that shortcut through your property all the time to get to the cinemas. And and I remember when Regency had a sign that said no theater traffic, cut through here, and I just ignored that. And I would usually end up stopping, like, oh, I got to get gas. Oh, I got to go to the bank. Oh, that's right, I get milk. I mean, because I was cutting through, I would stop and use all the facilities there. And to see that go away, I'm like, I don't know if I like that or not. That's like my place to cut across there. At the same time, one thing that we cannot control is the amount of traffic that we have on 12th and Sherwood Road. And when we put a super-sized Big Gulp Walmart thing over there, it's going to get worse. And I think it's proactive of the county to say, okay, well, what can we possibly do? And the light is an entirely separate issue. It really is.
Yes.
And that's really just arm wrestling between you guys and the landowners, how to figure that out. I don't know how to figure that out. But I like the idea is that, because this would allow me, I am already planning how I'm going to get to Home Depot from my house without having to drive onto Alton Sherwood Road or 99W. And I'm like, oh, I think I like that. So I'm all for, proposing, the connectivity that we really want to have. Because some of this area back here is like no man's land. I don't even know what goes on back there behind Century Storage. Who knows what goes on back there? I am for that concept. I am for proactive planning. I'm also pro-business, and I am pro let's not hurt anybody along the way when we make these decisions. But I think this is top level enough that we're just saying, let's put these dots on this map and stick it into our plan. It doesn't mean we have to, doesn't mean we can't change the plan in 5 years or 10 years if we have to make some kind of change. So.
And when it actually goes to being built, we can address all these issues we're talking about.
Right, because, I was
haven't already
concerned
fixed
about,
themselves.
one of the concerns I have was, okay, great, Washington County, draw a line there next to Les Schwab, but some of this property is already developed. So who is going to build this wonderful, glorious road that you have on this map? Well, I know the Langer property is going to develop the additional Langer property in front of the Century Storage, and maybe that little piece of land behind Les Schwab. If they develop, that's a good chunk of the road right there. So I think, and this brings to mind another little story. Sorry, as I drive between I-5 and Sherwood, and I take all of these wonderful new shortcuts that the city of Tualatin has placed in that light industrial area back there, I'm thinking like, wow, these guys thought way in advance. And because they did that, they're really handling the traffic and all that stuff that happens back there You know, it used to be just Herman Road, and if you got too close to the edge of Herman Road, you would lose half of your car in a ditch. It was that kind of a road, and that has completely changed. I mean, it's wonderful back there, and I don't want to be the city that doesn't, you know, think ahead. I think it's okay to think ahead and kind of get ahead of this, like they're saying. So, there's my 2 cents.
All right. I see you ready. Go ahead.
I'm ready. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the Sherwood City Council on PA 13-04 Baylor Way TSP amendment based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, finding, and conditions in the staff report and applicant's materials.
Is there a second?
Somebody down there can do it.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to forward a recommendation of approval on PA 1304 Baylor Way extension. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? It's
And-
been approved.
Go ahead. Great.
Okay.
All right.
I just have a quick comment though for the opponents. I want you to know that I personally agree with with what you have said about a lack of information, and if we were making a decision on that intersection, I think I would feel differently.
On the signalized
on the
intersection.
signalized intersection at Albertsons, because I do agree with you guys on your access.
But that's not
So,
our decision
but
tonight.
that right now
You can win your
wasn't.
Luba.
I mean, given that this is just that Baylor connector, that's that. But I want you to know that I do understand that, and I think that it is a very serious issue. So,
I'd have to agree with you on that one, James. Same here.
All right. Are there any other planning commission announcements?
I have one.
Yes.
Like I haven't spoken enough tonight.
Okay.
I just want to tell you, Sherwood is such a great city to live in. I'll tell you why. Because I'm lying in my bed with my wife the other day. We're watching.
now.
We're watching.
PG.
She's watching The Good Wife on Amazon Download or something, and there is this attorney, a blonde attorney, and she says, and somebody says, "Oh, you're from Oregon, right?" She says, "Yeah, I never see any action up there. You know, I moved because they moved. Well, I don't even know. It was Chicago, I think, is where the story is." And she says, "Oh, yeah, I'm from the Portland area. Nothing ever happens there. In fact, I'm from Sherwood. Nothing ever happens in Sherwood." I fell off of the bed.
It's the
This is the
investigator.
Good Wife.
It's the
This is-
investigator. She's from Sherwood. Yeah,
Isn't that
it's pretty
that's
cool.
crazy, isn't it?
It was last. Yeah,
I
it
know.
was last year.
I just barely saw it. So
I watched that show too.
Old news.
Makes me proud.
All right. Well, no other actions. We will adjourn. Sweet. Good night.